Hello there. In this video, I'll be reviewing the first half of the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV series. I'm just going to talk about some observations I made, then at the end I'll rate this half out of 10. So far there's been both things that I really like and things that I have some serious problems with. Now let's discuss my observations and how Deborah Chow is very much like George Lucas for better and worse. This opening scene during Order 66 was filmed well. I really like how it's a continuous shot, the sound was abrupt and the combat is intense. However, the lightsaber wounds were hidden if there at all, which is too kid-friendly for this scene. I mean, it's Order 66, it's dark, that's the way it's gotta be. Deborah Chow has followed the common sci-fi tactic of introducing the antagonist before the protagonist. One of the most noteworthy examples of this is Lucas introducing Vader before Luke in Episode 4, so nice move by Deborah Chow here. I love this setting. Over the years, directors have found so many ways to use Tatooine, and this butchery set up in the shadow of a giant stingray corpse is just so cool. It's a perfect setting for this labor operation where people work terrible jobs because they simply can't find better work. It's also the perfect place for Obi-Wan to start in this series. He was a Jedi Council member, and now he's cutting meat in a desert and living in a cave. It's the perfect setup for that contrast between his old reality and his new one. Here we see Obi-Wan struggling with PTSD. Showing Obi-Wan in this state is a powerful way to make the audience feel for him. There are many things he's struggling to come to terms with. As Bail Organa told him, many of the people in power at the height of the Clone War made mistakes. Obi-Wan seems to feel that he is partially to blame for the deaths of Anakin, Padme, and Qui-Gon. This dialogue exchange between Obi-Wan and Nari is great. Obi-Wan can't risk being discovered, so he tries to shrug him off, but at the same time, what Nari said was true. Sure, Obi-Wan has to guard Luke, but at the same time, he has fallen. He's not the Jedi he used to be, and he knows it. Later on, he finds out that the Inquisitors got Nari and made an example of him. I think the idea here is that it pushes him to go help Leia. He thinks that if he had helped Nari, then he may have been able to escape, and now yet another person who trusted him is dead. There's also the element of, if the Jedi stop being Jedi, then the Sith truly have won. I am amazed that the executives managed to keep Alderaan's appearance in this series a secret. As soon as it came on screen, my jaw dropped, and I was like, Alderaan is finally going to be used, and Jimmy Smits is back as Bail Organa. I cannot believe that this wasn't leaked, so I'm very impressed that this was all kept under wraps. I think Vivian Lyra Blair is great as a young Princess Leia. She sells the misbehaved tomboy character very well. Also, the writers have done a good job of writing her like Padme. Here we're shown just how ruthless Reva is, and how much the other Inquisitors hate her. She gets gradually more aggressive towards this seemingly random group of people that they've rounded up to the point where she cuts off someone's hand and threatens to kill Owen and his family. As far as we the audience know at this point, they have no reason to believe that this random group of people knows anything. So why get so aggressive? I think that's exactly what the fifth brother thought and why he got so mad at Reva. She makes it impossible to conduct a typical hush-hush investigation. There are a lot of questions being asked about Reva right now. Why is she like this? Why is she obsessed with Obi-Wan? And how does she know Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader? I somewhat agree with what Star Wars Theory suggested a few days ago. The first scene of the series shows a group of younglings watching their instructor get killed. Then the shot zooms in on one of the younglings, who I think it's safe to assume is Reva. I mean, there must be some reason that Deborah Chow is showing us this, and the other main characters of the series aren't here, so that leaves Reva. I think that we're gradually going to see more of what happened with this group of younglings throughout the series, and that will answer our questions about Reva. Perhaps she saw Anakin leading the attack and heard the clones call him Lord Vader, or maybe she saw the same security footage that Obi-Wan and Yoda saw in Episode 3. As for why she hates Obi-Wan, I bet that has to do with the attack on the temple as well. Maybe she saw Obi-Wan and called out to him for help, but he didn't hear her or something like that. I love this conversation between Leia and Bail Organa. It does a great job of showing how Leia gets along with her father a bit better than her mother, and Jimmy Smits nailed this scene. The audience could feel Bail's love for his daughter. This scene where Leia is captured was poorly shot in my opinion. Firstly, she must have been able to see this guy from way further back, yet she runs right up to him, then decides that he's suspicious. Then there's this chase scene that just isn't believable at all. I mean, these mercs take this long to grab a 10-year-old girl? I would have just ended the scene after they initially surrounded her, though I think I get why Deborah Chow did it this way. She wants this guard's body to be here for the others to find so that it's clear that mercs killed this guy and took Leia from her parents' point of view. But I feel like she could have gotten away with leaving it to be assumed that they found her clothes, or that they left some sort of trail. Here, Obi-Wan lets his lightsaber become visible, which he would never do. I get that it's more about symbolism, but it's just so unbelievably sloppy that I would cut it and just have him get on the ship. I also want to add here that this plot is perfect. Going into this show, I was worried that it wouldn't be believable for Obi-Wan to leave Tatooine. As we know, he takes guarding Luke very seriously, so why would he leave? This plot with Leia being in trouble presents a very believable reason for him to leave, so great job by the writers with this plot. In the next episode, Obi-Wan arrives on Daiyu, which I like as a setting. This old clone trooper was a nice touch. It helps tie this show with other Star Wars content taking place around this time. He soon finds Kumail Nanjiani's character Haja. This is the best new casting of the show so far. He is perfect as the sleazy guy with a conscience. This fight does a good job of showing how rusty of a fighter Obi-Wan is. He isn't used to taking hits, so this gasp after he takes a big blow goes a long way. Shortly after that, Flea and his mercs capture Obi-Wan and he escapes way too easily. To make this believable, this shot of him with the bottle in his hand should have been swapped with a close-up of him subtly reaching into his pocket. Then Obi-Wan and Leia meet for the first time. Leia's trap is a great way to establish her as crafty from Obi-Wan's point of view. At first, she is suspicious of Obi-Wan because from her point of view it would make more sense for her father to send one of his soldiers, rather than this stranger. She likely doesn't even know that her father still knows any Jedi. Obi-Wan presents her with a simple reason to go with him. He asks her, would you rather stay here? And she recognized it was in her best interest to go with him. This is a good introduction between these two characters because it presents a few of their key traits to each other, which helps justify their understanding of each other throughout the show. Oh no, the lightsaber is out again. Why on earth would you shoot this in the street, have them grab some clothes and duck into an alley to change? These simple directing screw-ups are starting to build at this point, and they get worse. In this scene, we get some exposure on Reva. The implication here seems to be that she asked to join the Inquisitorius rather than being forced to. The gutter could mean a few different things, and I think it may be hinting that we may get to see her turn to the dark side either in this show or in a comic or something. Leia says this when she sees Obi-Wan's bounty. You did lie. That's what you were hiding. You're the reason I'm here. They took me to get to you. Did my father even send you? How do I know you're not the real kidnapper? You weren't a Jedi. I don't believe you. She correctly determines that they kidnapped her to get to Obi-Wan, but beyond that, none of it makes any sense. The most logical thing to conclude is that it is in her best interest to trust him. First off, he already told her that people are looking for the two of them, so why is it surprising that someone has put a bounty on him? Second, if whoever hired the mercs knew that he would come by himself to rescue her from a dangerous group of mercs that violently kidnapped her and outnumber him, then clearly he is not the real kidnapper. The simplest explanation is that he is telling the truth. Jedi are valuable, so it's totally believable that someone might kidnap her to catch one. This dialogue was so bad and so unnecessary. There were plenty of ways to get them to the rooftop without Leia running away from him. Just have the bounty hunters chase them there. It would have saved time for a longer fight at the end. Haja shows up to help them. Overall, the dialogue exchange is fine, but the writers missed a big opportunity here. Instead of saying, "What choice do you have?" Haja should have said, "Would you rather stay here?" repeating Obi-Wan's line to Leia from earlier in the episode. It would have been a great way to poetically unite Obi-Wan and Leia by having them both receive that line, thus symbolizing that they are in this together now. Here we see Reva mind probe Haja. So this is the ability that the Grand Inquisitor was referring to. Having someone that's good at mind probing is very useful, especially in their line of work. So now there's suddenly no sense of urgency. I mean, it's not like they can control when a cargo ship leaves, but still, wouldn't it make more sense to get on and hide rather than walk over very slowly while you know people are looking for you? The bright spot of this scene is that Leia's dialogue really did make her sound like Padme. Deborah Chow, the writers, and Vivian Lyra Blair have done a good job making young Princess Leia very much like her mother. Then Reva arrives and decides to look for them very slowly and dramatically instead of efficiently. She tells Obi-Wan that Anakin is alive and this shot of his face is near perfect. My only suggestion for this shot is that I would have liked to see a drop of sweat drip from his left temple down to his cheek. This is where things plummet downhill when the Grand Inquisitor asks her to step aside. She stabs him through the gut and takes a few seconds just to make it dramatic while letting Obi-Wan get away. This whole time the writers have been setting up that she's fixated on catching Obi-Wan, and now they expect me to believe that she let him go just to intimidate the Grand Inquisitor after he's already been stabbed. As I said before, without the unnecessary chase scene with Leia, there would be more time for a descending scene. Here's how this scene should have been done with that extra time. Obi-Wan and Leia are debating whether or not to trust that Haja isn't setting them up with this ship. It concludes with the Padme-like dialogue we saw. Then as they approach the ship, Reva descends from above. She's a bit sweaty since she would have had to hustle to get there. Obi-Wan draws his lightsaber and sheds his robe. A fight commences between Reva and Obi-Wan. Reva is careful to keep herself between him and the ship, so she drives him backward. While Reva is focused on Obi-Wan, Leia picks up his robe and runs to the ship. While Obi-Wan and Reva are sparring, he uses the Force to try to hit her with a crate from behind, but she turns around and slices it in half. Obi-Wan uses that little bit of time to scurry behind some crates. Then Reva starts carefully searching for him while making sure that he can't try to run for the ship without her noticing. On board the ship, Leia is tightly holding Obi-Wan's robe when she feels something. She looks in the pocket and finds the blaster from earlier. While searching, Reva announces that Anakin is alive, and we see the shocked and scared look on his face with the drop of sweat like I suggested earlier. Reva figures out what stack he's behind and starts knocking pieces of it out of the way, then the shot from a blaster hits her in the back. Then we see Leia on board the ship firing at Reva as best she can. After taking one shot, Reva manages to draw her saber and deflect the rest. In the chaos, Obi-Wan manages to get to the ship while Reva is disoriented. As the ship is leaving, Reva runs up the dock and yells, "You can't win, Obi-Wan, you can't escape him." Then they get away. As Reva is leaving, the Grand Inquisitor shows up and is furious with her. He tells her that May could have gotten him if she had just obeyed orders. Then she stabs him in the gut and leaves him for dead. Back on the ship, Obi-Wan is absorbing the revelation that Anakin is alive, and then we see Vader's glowing eyes in the tank. That's how the end of this episode should have played out. All the same elements would have been there, but it would have been believable. The third episode begins with Obi-Wan once again trying and failing to reach Qui-Gon. Meanwhile, Darth Vader is putting his suit on. This is brilliant because Anakin's journey to becoming Darth Vader starts with Qui-Gon, so the more Obi-Wan tries to reach Qui-Gon, the more pieces of the Darth Vader suit go on. It's beautiful. We hear Vader's first lines of the series here, and I was very pleasantly surprised to hear James Earl Jones's voice come out of Vader's respirator. The lines are pretty well written in this scene too. It sounds like classic Vader. Shortly after this, Obi-Wan has this vision of Anakin, which I thought was cool too. Many will just gloss over this, but I want to draw your attention to how awesome this walk of Reva's is. She struts through this place like a boss with epic music playing in the background. Then these two stormtroopers stop to let her pass and she doesn't even look at them. Here's yet another plot hole. Obi-Wan immediately assumes that Haja had lied to them, but why would he do that? To set them up for an ambush and claim the bounty. So it makes no sense to assume that no one is coming. Either help or bounty hunters are on the way, but either way someone is coming. Haja has nothing to gain from just sending them on a wild goose chase. This whole ride in Freck's truck scene is badly written. Obi-Wan and Leia are way too suspicious for this to be believable. I mean, Freck literally says, "That's a weird story." Later on, the stormtrooper asks Obi-Wan what they're doing there, and Obi-Wan says that it's a long story. Then the stormtrooper responds, "It's a long way." But then they get off moments later. One could argue that he's just suspicious of them, but if that were the case, then he likely would have searched them when Obi-Wan accidentally said Leia's name. Here we get another taste of Leia being very clever, as she realizes that Obi-Wan knew her mother. Then we get some new info about Obi-Wan's family, which I'm very interested in. So he thinks that he remembers his parents and the brother. This could come back in future Star Wars content, Obi-Wan's mystery brother. At this gate, they are discovered, and there's a nice touch of violence when the stormtrooper falls through the beams and is cut in half. That's the level of violence Star Wars should have. Just after this fight, they meet Tala, the person Haja intended for them to meet back before they met Freck. She says that she was on her way, but they left before she got there. But wait a minute. So Freck is taking them to this gate. After they leave, Tala gets there and somehow beats them to the other side of the gate without passing them on the road. Someone didn't think this through. Now here we are introduced to The Path, a network of people helping Force sensitives escape the Empire. I think this is a really cool idea, and I can see more potential Star Wars content using it. It's quite similar to the Railroad in Fallout 4, which is of course based on the Underground Railroad. We also get a canon confirmation that Quinlan Vos is alive and hopefully will be a character in the next few episodes. Maybe he'll take over the fighting while Obi-Wan is recovering. When Darth Vader shows up, things get exciting. Hayden Christensen marches down the street like Freddy Krueger and kills a few people, hoping to lure Obi-Wan out. Obi-Wan sends Leia and Tala into the tunnel without him. I presume this is because he recognizes that Vader can feel that he's nearby, so he decides to split up with hopes of keeping Vader from finding Leia. The big encounter comes to fruition here. After a staring contest, Obi-Wan scurries away. Then, when he hears Vader's voice, he draws his lightsaber and looks around as if he has no clue where Vader is, but he saw him moments ago, so he should have a pretty good idea of where he is, and sure enough, he comes from the direction that one would expect. This sequence is just awkward. Deborah Chow should have just had Obi-Wan draw the saber here and skipped this first attempt at running away. Also, one of Vader's lines stands out to me as not sounding like Vader. "I am what you made me." The wording is too simplistic for a Vader line. Something like, "I am what you forged me into" would have been a much better choice. Then Obi-Wan runs away again, but after a little bit he just starts walking. What happened to the sense of urgency here? Of course Vader catches up and the fight starts. The combat is simplistic, but does a good job of showing how much stronger Vader is than Obi-Wan. Vader then just cuts to the chase and grabs Obi-Wan like a horror villain and begins to burn him. While Obi-Wan was in the air, I would have had Vader force throw his lightsaber, severing both of Obi-Wan's legs to make it so he can't run away. I'm pretty sure that we never actually see Obi-Wan's legs in A New Hope, so who's to say they're not cybernetic? I'm not displeased without it, but I would have done it that way. Overall, this sequence was great, well acted by James Earl Jones, Hayden Christensen, and Ewan McGregor, and very dramatic. My only complaint is that Obi-Wan being dragged on his side like this looks a bit awkward, though I get why it was done that way. He has no visible burn scars in A New Hope, so they need to keep the scars on areas that aren't shown in that movie. However, I would have just had him on his back, facing the other way, and fighting with all he has to keep his head just out of reach of the flames. Things deteriorate fast when Tala fires her first shot. This escape is bad, it's badly written and badly filmed. This guy was just burned, and Darth Vader is here, yet this droid just casually jaunts over and takes way too long to get Obi-Wan out of there. A lot of fans are wondering why Vader just let this happen, and I'm not sure either, but I have a few ideas. Lucas has this style of rhyming his stories, so from a writing standpoint, it could be that it's because Obi-Wan didn't kill Anakin after he burned on Mustafar, so Vader isn't killing Obi-Wan after he burns either. Also, he could be thinking that Obi-Wan can lead him to more Jedi. And finally, this is really all about the Mustafar fight. Vader wants to have a rematch of that fight, but Obi-Wan is in this weakened state, so it could be that Vader wants to beat him at his best and not like this. However, all those ideas have one thing in common. They're bad. After 10 years, Vader has a chance to capture Obi-Wan. He would not risk losing him here. Hence, this escape scene is just a complete mess. Something needs to make it so Vader can't prevent it for it to make sense. Maybe a ship full of Tala's allies comes and they do an escape like the one from Rebels Season 2 or something like that. Meanwhile, during all this, Reva found the end of the tunnel and somehow beat Leia to the end without breaking a sweat. We needed to at least see her sprinting over rooftops for this to be believable. So those are my observations from the first half of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Deborah Chow is very much like George Lucas for better and worse. We've gotten both great moments and really bad writing and filmmaking choices. Hopefully we'll only get the former in the next half. The mistakes really are very Lucas-like, which I find very fascinating. I'll give this first half of the series a 6.5 out of 10. That concludes this video. Please like, subscribe, and share. It really helps the channel grow. Check out my Patreon if you're interested in getting some benefits from my end. See you next time.